Hi guys, welcome to my channel and to my journey in beauty. Today's video is my wrap-up video for 1 week of the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. If you missed my original video, I'm trying to decide between the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette and the Lorac MEGA Pro 2 palette for the year of 2019 for my Pan That Palette challenge. Yes, it will be a challenge. It always is, in my opinion, when you try to pan a palette, and that's why I'm taking it so seriously this year. So the first video was just talking about the pros and cons of each of the palettes according to moi. And then I'm using each palette for 7 days straight just to get to know the palette a little better, maybe prove or disprove some of my pros and cons, and just overall kind of check out the palette. So this week I used the Jaclyn Hill X Morphe palette for 7 days straight. I did go ahead and check in with you guys each day, kind of tell you what I did, what I thought, how I was feeling about the palette. So we're gonna get into that right now, and then we'll come back for my final thoughts. So for day one, I did use Silk Cream as well as Mocha and Chip, and then I went in with this purple shade called Royalty on the outer half of the lid, and then I layered this shade called Hustle over most of the purple, and I think it just kind of muted the purple a little bit, gave the purple a little bit different effect. I am challenging myself this week, of course, to create looks for you guys that I haven't created before, and I don't even think I've used this shade's, I keep wanting to say Side Hustle from the Emily Noel palette, but it is just Hustle, and it's kind of a pinky, like a grayed out pink or like a metallic mauve shade. So that is what I have on my eyes today. Oh, also I did go in with the first shade in the palette called In Light. It's just ever so slightly cool toned of the two highlight shades. Already I'm kind of missing a light matte shade for a matte brow bone highlight. Not that I can't pull from a different palette if I pan this palette next year, but it would be nice to have in the palette for those who like to set their primer. I didn't. So far so good. I was very excited to dive into the palette today for day one. I love the look that came out, and stay tuned for day two. Hi guys, welcome to day two. Real quickly, I'll go through and tell you what shades I used. I used Silk Cream, although it's not much of a transition for me. So then I went in with this shade right here called Pooter, and it is ever so slightly more of a cool tone, you know, mid-tone brown here. And then I went into this shade right here called 24/7. I really thought that it looked more cool tone in the pan than it ended up looking on the eyes, but it did work in the crease to deepen it up a little bit. And then I went in with the shade Hustle again today. There went my light. Because I wanted to use this very light pink here called Faint, but neither one of these came off as I thought they would based on the swatches. The last shade I used was the shade again called Chip. Used that on the lash line as a liner, and then just to deepen the very outer part of the outer V. But here are the swatches as yesterday. This is Hustle, beautiful shimmery mauve color, and then this is Faint. And based on the swatches, I thought I'd come out with a nice pinky mauve look. This looks more warm and more neutral than I thought it was going to, but I am still really enjoying this palette. I do like the look that came out today. It just came out as a surprise, which is fine. And that's it. I am still enjoying the palette. Stay tuned for day three. Hi guys, welcome to day 3 with the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. The shades I used today were this one right here called Made for Each Other, or MFEO. And then I went in with this shade right here called Hillster in the crease, and I actually really liked it. Even though it's a shimmer, it actually turned out really nicely in the crease, which I think makes this palette that much more versatile if you can use the shimmers as a crease shade, you know, which you always can, but some shimmers just don't do very well in the crease, and this one did. Then I went in with the shade Twerk, this really cool blue on the center of the lids, which you can probably see. And then I went in with this peachy shimmer right here in the palette called Little Lady. And I really like it. Even though it looks kind of pink in the palette, it does very much come in off as a peach shade, and that's what I have as the inner third of my lid highlight. And then for the brow bone and the inner corner, I went in with the second shade in the palette called Beam. And that's it. That is this look. I did have a little trouble blending out or kind of getting that fade right from the light to dark shades, but overall I really like this look and I'm still loving the palette. I can't wait to see what I come up with tomorrow, and I will see you in day 4. Hi guys, and welcome to day 4. Today I went for a pink and gold look. I started out with this as a transition. This is MFEO, or Made for Each Other. Then I went into the shade Butter right here and deepened up the crease a little bit with that. Then I went into this really warm brown right here called Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red dress. And deepened up a little more in the outer corner and the outer half of the crease. And then I went in with this shade Buns just on the very outer corner, as well as right up against the lash line for some real depth but still warm. And then on the lid I have this shade right here called Sissy, as well as this gold shade right here called Queen. I really liked how they paired together and how the warm crease kind of ties them in together. And then I went in with this shade Faint on the inner corner. You can see it is popping. And last but not least, this shade In Light. Yes, In Light on the brow bone. Very subtle, and I love it. I love how this look came out. I'm learning a little bit about the palette every day. Today I learned that this look came out a lot better when I set down my NARS smudge proof eyeshadow base. So I'm gonna keep trying it set for the next couple of days just to form my opinions. The first 3 days I did not set my primer, and I felt like I had to really work harder to blend out the matte shades on the upper half of the of the lid of the eye. So anyhow, I am still loving this, and I will see you in day 5. Hi guys, and welcome to day 5 of Jaclyn Hill week. I'm having a little dental issue, so if I sound funny, that is why. For day 5, I went in with MFEO for a transition, as well as to blend out my crease shade. I'm actually making a little noticeable dip in that shade already, which is really fun. Then I went in with this red or dark crimson shade in the crease called Jax. Then I deepened up the outer corner and a little bit into the crease with this purple shade called Soda Pop. Then I went in with this shade Cranberry all over the lid. I used a tiny little bit of this purple shimmer Royalty to go in between the Soda Pop and the Cranberry shade. And then I did use In Light a little bit on the inner corner as well as a tiny bit up onto the lid for a highlight shade, and I went in with Soda Pop on the lower lash line and blended it out again with Royalty. This has got to be my favorite look so far, and I really enjoyed using this palette today. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm starting to get to the point where I can see myself possibly painting this next year, so that's all good news, and I will see you in day 6. And welcome to day 6 with the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. Today I did film a get ready with me, which you would have already seen by now, and I will link it in the cards in case you missed it. But today I multitask this palette for my entire face: bronzer, blush, highlight, eyes as well. So I went in with this shade right here, which is Silk Cream. And I also used this shade Pooter in the crease. Then I went in with this shade called Enchanted, which is a very deep green shade on the outer corner. And then I went in with Twerk all over the lid, and then layered Pool Party over the top, which had a new and fun effect in my opinion. And then I went in with In Light on the inner corner. I really like how this look turned out. I'm really excited about the fact that I was able to multitask this palette today. It was fun. It was just a little bit of makeup playtime. I hope you enjoyed this look, and I will see you in day 7 for the last look. Welcome to day 7. Please ignore the bedding, washing, laundry folding shenanigans going on behind me. But I just wanted to quickly tell you what I did today. I did end up using every single shade in this palette except for 3 in the 7 days. So today I went in with this shade called Meeks in the crease. And then I came and blended it out with the worst name shade in the palette, which is Pukey. And it is a nice warm shade you can see in the transition area, hopefully. And then I went in with this shade called Central Park, which is a deep, rich brown in the very outer corner as well as the lower lash line. And then I went in with this shade right here called Obsessed on the inner half, 2/3 of my lid, and just to soften the transition between Meeks and Obsessed, I used a little bit of SBN, Smoky But Natural. So yeah, and that is the look that you are seeing on me today. How am I feeling in day 7? I'm actually a little sad to be putting this away for at least a week. This palette definitely grew on me this week. I'll quit flashing it around because the packaging is reflective. But I am as well, though, very excited to be diving into a week of the Lorac MEGA Pro 2 so I can make some comparisons and get to know that palette a little better as well so that we can make a final decision in the 4th video. First and foremost, I will say that I did end up using every single shade in the palette this 7-day period, except for this shade, which is called Creamsicle, this shade called Firework, and this shade down here called Abyss, which is a matte black. I don't have a problem with a matte black, I just didn't reach for it in the 7 days. However, I have used Creamsicle and Firework recently. If you saw my no brand Get Ready With Me, This was the palette that I used, and I used both of those shades that day. So essentially the only shade I haven't used as of recently is Abyss. And like I said, I could have used it, I just chose not to. So I do feel like I got a very good picture of this palette. I learned some things about the shades in this palette, and I think I proved one of my pros for this palette and disproved one of my cons for this palette. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that I learned is that the darker shades in the palette are not quite as dark as they would appear to be, and that is a good thing. That was one of the cons in my original video, was that I felt like there's a lot of dark shades in here, and there are, but they aren't quite as dark as they would appear in the pan. This is actually a really nice green shade that shows up very green. This shade, Central Park, I used on my outer V today, and you can see that it's not super dark, and it does translate as brown, not brown black or black. And then this shade right here, Soda Pop, was the one that surprised me the most, because it does actually blend out really nicely, as well as it does show up purple on the eyes. It doesn't look like just a dark color or something like that. It actually comes off as purple. So that was really good news, and that definitely checked off one of my cons on this palette. Next, almost none of the shades in this palette actually look on the eye as they do in the pan. I think that's really important to know about this palette, because a lot of people talk about how this general section of the palette looks a lot the same, and it does to the naked eye. But once you swatch them out, once you put them on the eye, they actually do translate relatively differently. Overall, I found out that this palette is actually quite versatile, a lot more than I originally thought when looking at this palette, and even when purchasing this palette. I, like a lot of people, was attracted to these shades for sure, but I really did find through using this for 7 days straight that this palette is quite versatile in terms of a gradient from light to dark, as well as a mixture of shimmers, etc. So I would say all of those things that I just mentioned would be additional pros that I found to panning this palette next year. However, I did find one additional con, if you will, to this palette while using it for 7 days, and that was this palette makes it almost impossible to set up a cool toned crease for, let's say, a cool tone look. Now these shades up here are very cool toned. However, a lot of the shades that you would use to build up a crease like I did today are warm tones. Now, I personally love mixing warm tones and cool tones. I think it adds interest to the eye and just makes your collection that much more versatile. But I do think that this palette is lacking the cool shades to set up a cool crease, so to speak. Now, that's not a problem, because if I should decide to pan this palette next year, I have a lot of other palettes, and I can set up a cool crease and then come into this for the other shades for a cool tone look. But that was just one thing that I kind of figured out through the process of working with this for a full week, and I thought it was important to note. Overall, how do I feel about this palette now that I've been working with it for a week? I feel less scared about panning this. I will say that so far we have an overwhelming majority of people that would like to see me pan this palette next year. And I will say that after using it for 7 days and getting to know it a little bit better, I am much more open to doing that. As well as a lot of you have made really good points down in the comments on the first video, and that is, if I do pan this palette next year, I don't have to hit pan on every shade. I don't even have to hit pan on half of the shades. I can just make goals as I go, and make goals for how much I'm going to be using this from day to day, etc. So that also makes me feel more open to panning this palette next year. However, That being said, the next video in this mini series that will be coming to you is 7 days of the Lorac MEGA Pro 2. Now I have been panning this palette for the entire year, so to speak. My goal was to hit 4 to 6 shades in this palette before the end of the year, and I still believe that's possible, and I'm hoping a full week with this palette will give me an opportunity to make some good progress in here. So this is what's coming next. I'm going to give this one a fair shot or a good college try and use it for 7 days. See what I learned, see if I can prove any pros or disprove any cons. I'm very curious how many of you will be panning a palette next year in 2019. And if you are, and if you know what it is, what might that palette be and what will your goals be next year in 2019? And I hope all of your makeup days are beautiful makeup days, and I will see you in my next video soon. Bye!